2003, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A workplace, a camera, a crime nobody wanted to see. He had been doing it for years. Everyone knew. Nobody stopped him. Then a camera caught everything. Clear, undeniable, impossible to ignore. HR buried it. Management ignored it. 3 years. The footage sat in a server, waiting, until Diane decided she had waited long enough. This is her story.
No, this changes everything. We have to act.
Her name was Diane, a 29-year-old logistics coordinator working at a mid-sized shipping company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She had built a strong reputation over 4 years for reliability, precision, and never missing a single deadline. She loved her work. She was proud of what she had built there, and by every measure, she was exactly the kind of employee any company should have been grateful to have. But from the very first month she walked through those doors, one man had made it his mission to make sure every single day was harder than it needed to be. His name was Troy, 44 years old, a senior manager with 12 years at the company, the kind of man who had been there long enough to feel completely untouchable, and who acted like it every single day without apology or hesitation. From the very beginning, Troy targeted Diane specifically, making inappropriate comments about her appearance in front of coworkers, standing too close, touching her shoulder when she had never invited it, showing up at her desk repeatedly when there was absolutely no professional reason to be there, making her feel watched, followed, uncomfortable in her own workplace every single day. Diane reported his behavior formally to HR after just her 3rd month, providing specific dates, specific incidents, and specific witness names. HR told her they would look into it, and then did absolutely nothing. She reported it again 6 months later with even more detail, more examples, and a written timeline of every incident she had documented. HR told her the matter had been reviewed internally, and then did absolutely nothing. She reported it a 3rd time in 2002, this time in a formal written complaint with dates, witnesses, and a request for a written response. This time, HR told her to consider whether she might be misinterpreting normal professional interactions, and then did absolutely nothing. Troy kept going, because Troy knew with complete certainty that nothing would ever change. Because the HR manager handling every one of Diane's complaints was a man named Steve, who had been Troy's close personal friend for over a decade outside of work. Steve and Troy played golf together on weekends. Their families had vacationed together twice. Every single complaint Diane filed landed directly on Steve's desk, and Troy was personally informed of everyone. He laughed about it openly in front of colleagues who said nothing. Nobody wanted to challenge Troy. Nobody wanted that target on their back. So they stayed quiet, and Diane remained completely alone in a fight that should never have been hers to fight by herself. On the evening of November 18, 2003, Diane was working late alone, finishing a critical project deadline. Most of the office had emptied out hours earlier. The corridors were quiet. The lights were dimmed in most sections. Troy appeared in the corridor outside her office just after 8 p.m. She noticed him but kept working, head down, focused, trying to ignore the feeling crawling up her spine. When she got up to go to the supply room to collect printing paper, he followed her. He entered the supply room directly behind her and closed the door. She turned around, and he grabbed her arm hard when she tried to move past him. Hard, deliberate, with intent. He blocked the doorway with his body, keeping her trapped inside that room for several seconds while she tried desperately to get out. Diane pushed past him with everything she had, walked out of that room, grabbed her bag from her desk, and left the building immediately. She sat alone in her car in the dark parking lot for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, not moving, just trying to breathe, trying to process what had just happened to her in a building where she was supposed to be safe. What neither of them knew in that moment was that a CCTV security camera mounted in the corner of that supply room had captured every single second of what Troy had done. Clear, steady, undeniable, from every angle. Diane found out about the footage 2 weeks later from a sympathetic colleague who worked in building security and felt she deserved to know. She immediately submitted a formal written request to HR demanding access to that footage as evidence of what had happened to her. Steve reviewed her request personally, told her the footage had already been examined internally and showed no violations of any company policy. He informed her that no further action would be taken, and never once showed her a single frame of what that camera had recorded. The footage was never shown to Diane, never submitted to any independent review, never properly logged as evidence of anything. It simply sat on a company backup server, quietly buried under years of routine data, exactly where Troy and Steve needed it to stay. Diane went home that night and sat at her kitchen table for a very long time. She had reported it 3 times, been dismissed 3 times, and now the one piece of evidence that could prove everything she had said was being hidden from her by the very people paid to protect her. But she was not done. She contacted an employment lawyer the very next morning, a woman named Patricia who listened to everything, believed everything, and took the case without hesitation. Patricia filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission within days. Federal investigators were assigned to the case within weeks, and they immediately issued a subpoena for all workplace CCTV footage from the past 3 years. Steve told the federal investigators that the relevant footage had been deleted as part of routine data management. Standard procedure, he said. Nothing unusual, completely normal. The investigators nodded, said thank you, and then checked every single backup server in the building anyway. The footage was there, completely untouched, exactly where it had always been, never deleted, never modified, sitting right where Steve had left it after deciding it would never see the light of day. The investigators watched it in full, and the case changed completely from that moment forward, because what that camera had recorded left absolutely no room for interpretation, no professional interaction being misread, no gray area of any kind. Troy's actions in that supply room were unambiguous, calculated, predatory. Every single thing Diane had reported across 3 formal complaints over 3 years was right there on that footage, exactly as she had described it. Investigators then pulled 3 full years of HR complaint records. What they found was a pattern that went far beyond Diane's case alone. Every complaint against Troy, across multiple employees, had been closed without proper investigation, routed through Steve, buried, without any follow-up to the women who had filed them. 2 other female employees had filed formal complaints against Troy in the 2 years before Diane's case. Both complaints had gone through Steve. Both had been suppressed entirely. Neither woman had ever received any response, any outcome, or any protection from the company that employed them. The company had known what Troy was doing, and had chosen to protect him every single time. Protected by a friendship that had quietly turned an HR department into a personal shield for a predator. Federal investigators formally charged the company with maintaining a hostile workplace environment. Troy was terminated immediately upon their review of the CCTV footage. No severance, no negotiation, effective immediately. Steve was fired for gross misconduct and the deliberate suppression of workplace harassment complaints. The company was fined $1.2 million for its systematic failure to protect its own employees. Diane's case went before an employment tribunal in 2006, 3 years after that night in the supply room. 3 years of fighting a system that had been deliberately designed to protect the wrong person. She won. Full compensation, legal costs covered, and a public acknowledgement from the company of every single failure it had made. The 2 other female employees filed their own individual complaints after Diane's case became public. Both settled successfully within the following year. Troy was permanently barred from holding any management or supervisory position in any industry going forward. Steve lost his HR certification permanently and has never worked in human resources again. Troy has never worked in a corporate environment since the day those federal investigators sat down and watched that footage. Diane left the company shortly after her settlement was finalized. She said she could not walk those corridors anymore without her chest tightening, could not pass that supply room door without feeling it all over again. So she left, and she built something completely new. A new job, a new team, a workplace where she felt genuinely safe for the first time in years. She said in an interview afterward, "I reported it 3 times. 3 times they looked me in the eye and chose him over me. The only reason I got justice was because of a camera that someone forgot to delete. And that should terrify every single person who has ever reported something and been ignored." Workplace harassment is one of the most underreported crimes in the United States. Studies estimate that over 70% of victims never formally report what happened to them because they fear exactly what Diane experienced, being ignored, dismissed, or quietly blamed for what was done to them. HR departments are designed first and foremost to protect companies from legal liability. And that is a reality too many people only discover after it is already too late. If you are ever experiencing workplace harassment, document everything from day one, keep personal records completely separate from work systems, save every email, and write down exact dates and exact words used. If internal reporting fails you, and it fails far more people than it ever should, contact the EEOC directly, because you do not need permission from inside a broken system to seek justice outside of it. Diane waited 3 years. The camera waited 3 years. The 2 women who came after her waited even longer. But justice, when it finally came, was real, it was complete, and it reached every single person who deserved it. The camera saw everything from the very first second. It just needed someone brave enough to stand up, keep fighting, and refuse to walk away until the right people were finally forced to look. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, check on the people around you, ask if they are okay, and actually listen when they answer. Subscribe to Dark Chapters US because there are many more chapters left to uncover, and none of them are easy to read.